mean, UFOs do affect humans. So the AAWSAP people and the DIA people came together and agreed at the very beginning of this program to essentially run both in parallel. So the design of the AAWSAP program, even the people we hired, and also the people, the actual projects that were tasked out to people on a daily basis, not to mention the design of the architecture of the UFO data warehouse, as we called it. All of this was designed from that original cause, which was we're going to study both the nuts and bolts aspects of UFOs as well as the human effects. Now, obviously, human effects go all the way from the initial sort of what John Mack used to call ontological shock, the change in worldview, all the way through physiological effects, pathological effects, medical injury cases, psychological effects, and then, further on, as you get into deeply investigating the same group of eyewitnesses over time, they start spilling out these secrets that, weird things are starting to happen in their surroundings. And that leads into, dreams are being affected, psychology is being affected. So human effects is very complex, but also very necessary. So the AAWSAP program, I believe, is pretty unique in the annals of U.S. government programs in both focusing on the nuts and bolts as well as the human effects.
Colm, I'd love to follow up with that. What obstacles did you encounter from the US government when AAWSAP was operational? And did the nickname AATIP keep you off the radar in some cases?
Certainly, the last part of your question, certainly that was the case because within less than a year of the program running, it became obvious that the program was actually running below the radar for quite some time. But it was decided because of the amount of progress that was being made in certain areas that Senator Reid decided to go ahead and pen a letter and begin the process of initiating a special access program. In order to do that, he sent a letter, and he used for security purposes, he used a nickname. It wasn't AAWSAP, it was AATIP. That's the genesis of the AATIP moniker. So AATIP later on was used, as George mentioned, in a separate Pentagon program that was focused mostly on the threat analysis to what was going on both on east and west coasts of the United States. But the AAWSAP attempt at special access program designation ran into some bureaucratic hurdles, as we talk in the book. But again, there was a distinction between AAWSAP and AATIP, even from that perspective. AATIP was a nickname that was used for AAWSAP in Senator Harry Reid's letter to the Deputy Secretary of Defense.
Now, both of you, I'd like to mention that the experiences mentioned in the book sometimes are nothing short of harrowing. George, when I interviewed you earlier in the year, you mentioned the hitchhiker effect was something that you had potentially experienced yourself, or at least had followed to potentially part of the family too. Given your knowledge of what others have experienced and have subsequently suffered medical effects, what goes through your mind in moments like you've talked about in the book?
Well, we're talking about the hitchhiker effect, and the NIDS team that had been on Skinwalker Ranch had experienced some of that during their first study. It became more harrowing, to use your word, during the AAWSAP study. Things would follow you home. In essence, what happens on the ranch doesn't stay on the ranch, and it's hard to get your head around that. It's harder still to believe that it's true, but it is. I had, over the last couple of years before the book came out, had described some of those experiences, some of them inartfully. I had described them in public presentations. And, I think people probably thought I was making it up or was completely exaggerating. Now with the book out, you can see that I wasn't exaggerating. the people to whom this happened, I mean, it happens to a lot of folks who went onto the ranch property, and no one could really explain why. The term hitchhiker, I think, was described by one of the intelligence operatives who visited the ranch during the AAWSAP study. And the stories that we've told are of these big, tough, experienced, battle-hardened agents and operatives, intelligence officers who would visit the property. They're ready to take on anything. They're not afraid of what it is. And then they encounter very strange things. The one story that Colm puts in the book is about these three operatives who were on the property one night walking through the middle homestead, and they run into, in effect, a cold front, this really chilly area where the temperature drops about 20 degrees right in the middle homestead. They back off for a while, and then they walk forward again. And through infrared, they see this gigantic oval of black. I mean, blacker than the sky, blacker than anything could be seen. And they got a feeling of menace out of there. And in essence, they froze for a while. They backed off. They were frightened way out of proportion to what they should have been, given that their experience and bravery in the first place. And then all three of them carried it home with them. They get home, and this thing starts spreading sort of like a virus, which is Colm's specialty, but it goes from the people who were on the ranch to their family, to their family's friends, strange apparitions, crypto creatures, poltergeist type activity. We're not making this stuff up. It happened to a lot of the people who went on the ranch, and it happened to me, and also to Mr. Bigelow. And I don't know if Colm wants to share his experiences or not. And again, I never saw anything on the ranch that I would consider to be anomalistic or paranormal or supernatural. But I tried. I went there a couple of dozen times, and I would bring little things home. I'd bring bits of rock and wreckage from the homesteads and tried to engage with it, but I still never saw anything. My wife, however, did. And I don't want to go into a lot of details, but it started with these blue orbs that were over our house, and then something that came into our bedroom, and it was a very harrowing experience. But we can't exactly explain the mechanism of how that happens or what it is that attaches to people, but it happens. Colm has some better stories than I do about it.
Well, I can certainly attest to going back all the way, to 1996. We did occasionally when we first joined National Institute for Discovery Science in June of 1996. That was around the same time that Robert Bigelow had purchased the Skinwalker Ranch. And so we were deployed as scientific personnel to sort of co-locate with sensors up there to see what we could see in terms of both validating the sensors, and the sensors would validate us. But quickly it became obvious, when I would come home after five days or a couple of weeks on the ranch, that some stuff would be noticeable in the house. My wife would describe some stuff in the house, but it never reached the same level of sort of what you guys have called harrowing experiences. My experience of it was fairly low key, but as George also mentioned, every single military intelligence officer who was on that ranch brought something home with them, having experienced something on the property. So normally my experience, having spent maybe 300 plus days on Skinwalker Ranch, is that it's the exception rather than the rule to experience anything. But it was really noteworthy that all five of these military intelligence people from the Navy, from the Army, from different organizations, all five of them experienced stuff on the ranch. And secondly, all five of them brought a hitchhiker or whatever that is home, in that 3,000 miles away on the East Coast, their homes became the equivalent of a paranormal Disneyland, and where dark shadows were sort of appearing in their bedroom, orbs of various colors would be floating around the house, black cubes would suddenly appear, heavy footsteps would appear be heard on the stairs. People would rush out to see what was going on, and nobody was there. That became commonplace in the homes of all 5 people. And notably, it was the families who experienced it.
Something that I struggle to get my head round, Colm, is with so much of this phenomenon being experienced in those ways you're talking about, and you're talking about intelligence officials seeing black, portals, for lack of a better word, opening up, and why is the US government happy to give up control of such a place to the point it's now on TV on the History Channel under the ownership of Brandon Fugel?
Well, to be honest, I think it would take a very hardened, sort of open-minded person in the U.S. government to be able to talk and brief the Senate Intelligence Committee staffers and senators on what essentially was a litany of Halloween kind of weirdness. It would be a very difficult thing to do, to be taken seriously. So I have a certain amount of sympathy with the softly approach, which is essentially stick to the nuts and bolts part of this, and that's exactly what the UAP task force has been sort of moving through the various Senate Intelligence Committees, etc., in order to establish a beachhead in the United States government. I have a lot of sympathy with that whole approach, because we were very, very lucky at AAWSAP to be given the green light to essentially approach this from an umbrella perspective. That was very, very rare. I mean, if you go back in history, you look at Project Sign, Project Grudge, Project Blue Book, none of these programs really had the terms of reference that the AAWSAP program had, and none of them became quite as large or quite as all-embracing as the AAWSAP program. So in our opinion, the AAWSAP program is probably a unique template upon which maybe a future program could be structured. But, as I said, one step at a time. And I do have a lot of sympathy with that concept of one step at a time.
Let me add, Andy, this is the brilliance of the AAWSAP approach, is that they were going to follow the evidence wherever it led, however weird it might seem. The DIA, if it was highly unlikely DIA would ever assign its own personnel other than Jim Lukatsky to investigate something so weird. It would be cut off in a minute. That was part of the challenge for Bass is keeping this in a stovepipe so that the rest of the Pentagon didn't find out exactly what they were going, because there would be hell to pay. People would say it's ridiculous, even though they don't know what the focus of the study was. In order to understand this mystery, you have to follow the evidence where it leads. And all previous UFO studies around the world would only look at, as Colm mentions, the nuts and bolts of UFOs. Do we have radar visuals? Do we have metamaterials from crashes? That kind of thing, which is strange enough in itself to the general public. To suggest that a government-funded program should investigate poltergeist-type activity, the sighting of bipedal wolves, they'd laugh you out of the. You couldn't have a Senate hearing about that. They'd laugh you out of the Senate hearing room. I asked Lou Elizondo in 2018, the spring of 2018, after I had released some of the details about the AAWSAP and some news stories. I asked him about AAWSAP, and he. I'll dig up those clips and share them with you sometime. But can you solve this mystery by only looking at military encounters, radar sightings, things of that sort? And he said no. But you have to do what is possible to do. And AATIP, in part, carried on the study at a very limited scope because that's what was doable. That's what they could get away with. That's what the UAP task force and whatever its successor is going to be could do. No politician is going to fund poltergeist research or looking into werewolves. They would be willing to look at the national security implications of unknown craft entering our airspace. So it was both the brilliance of AAWSAP to be willing to follow the evidence where it leads, and also its biggest challenge.
Watch more podcast clips now on our YouTube channel. Go to Livewire Podcast Clips and watch more great podcast videos just like this one.